Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to this Scottsdale Unified School District Governing Board meeting. Today is November 22nd. Time is 5:12 p.m. I apologize. And we'll begin with roll call.
Pam Kirby, Kim Hartman, Jackson, Barbara Perleberg,
and Bonnie Sneed. Mrs. Hartman, would you help us lead us in the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. There are a couple amendments, or there's an amendment to the agenda for the consent agenda. Well, first we'll approve the whole agenda with the amendments that were issued and posted by the district office, although the ones that I saw had a typo on them and said that they were item 7, and they're actually item 9. And then I have some items, when we get to the consent agenda, I have some items that I'll have to pull.
Do you want me to move? I move we approve the agenda as presented?
With amendments?
Yes.
Okay.
second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
That motion passes 5-0. The next item is student and staff recognitions and celebrations. Dr. Birdwell.
And Dr. Von Echten is going to join us now with some student celebrations.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Dr. Birdwell, Madam President and Governing Board. We have 3 very special high school students that I wish to recognize tonight. First, from Desert Mountain, if I could have Joe Silvestre de Sousa and perhaps Mrs. Wilfert join me at the podium. Joe, pardon my Portuguese, that was probably not what? Are you Joe? Good. Nice to meet you. And Richard, yes. Thank you for joining us. Every year at the Arizona Department of Education's Office of English Language Acquisition Services Conference, a group of students whose success in English language is that is noteworthy is recognized. Joe tonight is one among them. Coming from Brazil, Joe's native language is Portuguese. He moved to Scottsdale as an 8th grader less than 3 years ago when his father's job as a trainer of Arabian horses brought his family here. He knew absolutely no English, but became proficient in less than 1 year, learning to speak in complete sentences, understanding parts of speech, using correct verb tenses, reading for comprehension, and being able to write grammatically correct paragraphs, narratives, and stories. He watched movies and videos and studied hard to learn English. His teachers describe him as being diligent, conscientious, inquisitive, intelligent, and caring. And he asks a lot of questions, which is a good thing. Joe takes all college prep classes at Desert Mountain, where he is a junior this year and receives A's and B's. His favorite class is biology, and he hopes to become a veterinarian. On top of all this, he is an assistant coach for the Mountainside soccer team. You can see easily why Joe has been chosen as one of Arizona's top English language learners this year. He will travel to Tucson December 7th to receive his award at the State Department of Education's OLEAS conference, at which he is one of the just 4 students that will be recognized at that conference. Here tonight with him are his English immersion teacher, Richard Vernese. Thank you for being up here, Richard. His district language development coach, Linda Thomas, maybe up there. Hi there, come on up. And Mom, I believe Mom's here? Yes. All right, well come on up, Mom, everyone. There we go. And I believe we're going to do photographs up that way. Okay. All right, next we have a couple Saguaro recognitions. If I could have student Katie Dempsey and principal Ann Oxiger join me at the podium. It's all right. Hi, Katie. Katie has 2 graduations on her calendar, one next month from Saguaro and the other in May from Scottsdale Community College. Katie's great accomplishment has been achieved through her participation in Hoop of Learning, the Maricopa County Community College District's high school to college bridge program designed to meet the academic and cultural needs of Native American students. Excuse me. Through Hoop, dual enrollment classes through Scottsdale Community College, advanced placement courses at Saguaro, and her great determination, Katie will receive her high school diploma in December and her associate's degree from SCC in May. Her guidance counselor at Saguaro tells us that achieving these dual graduations in the same year has been Katie's plan since day one, and now she's done it. Next up, Northern Arizona University, where she will continue her studies in hotel restaurant management. Katie, congratulations. We know that more great things are ahead for you. Well done.
And Katie, I believe your family is here, is that correct? If we could have them stand, thank you for blessing us with your daughter.
Oh, Mrs. Oxlinger, stay up here with me. Because we have Cameron. Cameron White, can Cameron join us? There he is. Congratulations. Cameron, who's also a member of the SaberCats class of 2017, has the distinction of having received a perfect score on the ACT test, a rare and difficult accomplishment. That's impressive. Nice. In fact, less than 0.1% of the more than 1.9 million students who take the ACT every year receive a perfect score of 36. It seems Cameron is pretty proficient when it comes to taking college entrance tests. He was within 10 points of receiving a perfect score on the SAT as well. Unless you think that's all that Cameron does is sit around and study for these kind of tests. He's also president of Saguaro's National Honor Society and Orchestra Club. He is principal cellist in the orchestra. He is a semifinalist for the 2017 National Merit Scholarship, and he is a member of the Tri-M Music Honor Society, Science Olympiad, DECA, Model UN, Speech and Debate, and Creative Coding Clubs. Really nicely done.
And an Eagle Scout.
And an Eagle Scout, there you go.
And I believe he has family here as well. So
We gotta
parents
introduce
and
them.
grandparents?
Nice.
Oh, thank you. Now, he goes outside for a picture, and we'd love his family to join him in that photo. So parents and grandparents, and again, thank you.
It is. Okay. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Right? Yeah. This is the portion of the SUSD Governing Board meeting when we invite the public to make comments. And we're not required to do so, but we value the input of the community, and we feel it's an important part of communication with our stakeholders. As explained on the cover of the agenda, anyone that's wishing to address the governing board will fill out and submit a white card for agenda matters and blue for non-agenda. And then please, if you have any more, bring them up to the podium. For agenda matters, please indicate your desire to speak and list the item number or topic on the card. And for non-agenda matters, it's important to take note that action taken as a result of this type of public comment will be limited to responding to criticism made by those who have addressed the governing board, or directing staff to look into the matter, or asking that the matter be placed on a future agenda. Pursuant to ARS 38-431.01G, no other discussion or legal action is allowed. Please keep in mind that public comments represent the personal view of the speaker and may contain incomplete or inaccurate information. If the item is an agenda item, we encourage audience members to stay and listen to the discussion pertaining to that agenda item to gain a more full understanding. Please approach the microphone when your name is called and in the order called. All public comments and matters are subject to the following limitations. There's a 3-minute speaking limit. And Vice President Perleberg will hold up your cue cards to let you know how much time is remaining. In all cases, public comment is subject to reasonable subject matter, place, and manner restrictions. Please word your comments so they're not defamatory or disrespectful in nature. The first card that we have is William Teskey.
2 weeks ago this evening, we had a general election of which we had two issues, bond issue and a bond override issue as presented. I understand that they had passed, both of them. And about 2 weeks or so before, the informational pamphlet was mailed out, probably thousands of voters here in Scottsdale, you know, pro and con. And I noticed that under both the override and the bond issue, it said in this booklet that arguments against the proposal, none were submitted. Now, I know in the past and that they've always had opposition to the bond override issues. And in taking precaution in that, which I did, is I went before the Maricopa County School Superintendent's office on Central Avenue, and I had them stamped on my opposition to the bond issue. And that is not true. Because I had opposed 3, that's the 3rd time now, my opposition to the bond issues had not been published. And I've had no redress at all with the controlled, manipulated news media, the Arizona Repugnant, nobody spoke for me. And I had some serious issues that I had put on my website, and that about, you know, impropriety, et cetera, et cetera. And in there, we had $250 million came up on bond issues, questions. That's a lot of money. That's what even Bernie Sanders had raised during the presidential primary election. Of course, that's a lot of money. And I've been an auditor, an accountant. I've handled hundreds of millions of dollars in my lifetime. One day I handled $100 million. I know what money is and the temptation that this has. And I had issues on there about these broken down schools that fall apart in 30 years. They're junk properties that where I'm from in the upper Midwest and Far East, properties will last 100, 150 years schools. I know that as a fact. And yet here, they fall apart in 30, 40 years. And there's no question, you know, you're saying, well, you're doing this for the children. Well, that's balderdash. I think the children are getting the crumbs. And the taxpayers and that, this is what the taxpayers are getting. This, a royal screw job. And I'm very angry. I brought this up again, 30 seconds. I can't believe this short time. That there are 3 things that are necessary for impropriety. Number 1, there's got to be money there that can be taken and scourged, opportunity, and the likelihood the perpetrator of the fraudster saying, I'm not going to get caught. And I know, but I've been around a long time, and I'm not being fooled. Look at this, being stopped right now by freedom of speech. And with the city of Scottsdale, I tried to, there were 6 bond issues there that they had, and I couldn't voice my opinion because they wanted $100 each, freedom of speech. What kind of a country or republic is this? I have to put up with this. And I had lots to say in there, much, much more to say. And I was stifled and shut up.
Thank you. Mr. Rick Carpinelli is next.
And I'm going to warn you, sooner or later,
Mr.
this is going
Teskey?
to come down and come crashing down.
James, if you could help us out.
Yeah.
What's going
James.
Mr. Teskey, this is a fair process. Everyone gets 3 minutes. Thank you for yours. Rick Carpinelli. And then after that, Edmund Richard.
Good evening.
Good
I'm
evening.
Rick Carpinelli. I live in the Scottsdale School District, and this evening I wanted to speak to an item that's on the agenda. It looks like it's toward the end of the agenda. It's in reference to appointing 2 board members to negotiate a contract with Dr. Denise Birdwell. So am I talking about this now? Okay, right, didn't know if you called in order on the agenda. I would like to encourage you to, as the board, to move forward and negotiate with Dr. Denise Birdwell and bring her on board as our permanent superintendent. It's been, I met Dr. Denise Birdwell about 9 months ago, soon after she first started, and everything I've seen that she's been doing a terrific job. I've had the great opportunity to work with her through my affiliation with the Scottsdale Charles as the education chairman this year for the Scottsdale Charles. And Dr. Birdwell has embraced our organization, has worked directly with our organization for the benefit of the Scottsdale school system, has some incredible ideas, and when she looks at implementing those ideas, she's given consideration from top to bottom for whether it's the teachers, the students, the parents, the administrative staff. And so I think that what I've seen her do is a great job. I see no reason why she shouldn't and couldn't be our permanent superintendent. I understand there's a concern about a process issue or maybe a promise that's been made. And I would just challenge you as board members to also remember the promise made to us as residents is that you're here to speak on our behalf. And when there's something right, speak on our behalf. And in this case, I would ask you, speak on our behalf and make Dr. Birdwell our permanent superintendent. I understand going out for a process and being fair and trying to eliminate maybe some unfairness or inside dealings or something along those lines to go out for a national search. If we go out for a national search, we're looking at continuing the interim status for another extended period of time. We go through a process, what do we gain? This was when you hired Dr. Birdwell as an interim, you went through a process. The process was done. And so I would say the fairness that occurred, let's bring her on board. Since she's been here, we've passed 2 overrides. And in my time, it's since 2004 being in Scottsdale, I haven't seen these overrides passed. And in fact, I saw the last one, well, 2 overrides ago, it took, 3 times, maybe 4 times for it to get passed? And we got it passed with Dr. Birdwell here as our interim. And then we got the capital campaign passed. So please take that into consideration. Appreciate your service to our school system and our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Edmund Richard, and then after that, Nancy Cantor. And then, well, together with Jim, Heather? Okay. Instead of separate? Okay, thank you. Okay. Mr. Richard.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Birdwell. I'm here to speak about item 9. If you look at it as 2 conflicting items, one is to continue this frankly ridiculous idea to go for a nationwide search, and the other is to have 2 board members negotiate a contract for Dr. Birdwell. I'm a parent of 6 kids. They've all gone to Coronado Complex schools. I'm going to be honest, our schools have issues. I'm sorry, as you guys like calling them, opportunities. Well, here's an opportunity. Dr. Birdwell has finally showed the community, for once, a positive outlook. Ms. Sneed, Mr. Jackson, as you guys leave this board, you need to realize something. For once, we have a superintendent, even with the name interim attached to it, which has actually created a positive momentum. That is something you can't ignore. The other thing is, on this little slide, he keeps on mentioning education. Dr. Birdwell so far has been the only educator we've had as a leader in this district which can speak to people, address issues, and yes, create more opportunities. You realize as a voter, I understand our first speaker was a little bit impassioned, but you need to understand something. If there's no clear leadership, you guys aren't going to accomplish anything. Dr. Birdwell is showing leadership. I don't know what else anyone wants, But to me and for my family, Dr. Birdwell is the choice. I need you all to understand, I have a 4th grade son. I'm going to be in this complex for quite some time. And I'm going to have 3 kids who've left Coronado. One of them is going to graduate this year. I cannot let my other 3 kids continue to stay in a district which floats around leaderless while people can't figure out what to do. I don't want to keep on coming up here and looking like I'm at the zoo, where people are confused and looking around. No. You guys know you have issues, you have opportunities, whatever you want to call them. Dr. Birdwell is providing solutions. She's building confidence. Her actions helped the capital override and the bond issue pass. That should be something you all should take into your heart and realize why. Our last superintendent did not build up confidence. He did not build up transparency. He didn't do a lot of things. Dr. Birdwell has turned that around. I think it's about time you look at the community and realize now is not the time to squash what little hope we have. Thank you.
Nancy Cantor and Jim Heather.
Edmund, you're going to be here a lot longer than that now that you've got kids graduating and heading out into the world. I started here in Scottsdale Unified School District as a student in the 8th grade at Hohokam School, graduated from Coronado. Lo and behold, I found myself back here with 2 boys at Hohokam School who graduated from Coronado. So it never ends. And that's a good thing, because to have community feel welcome in your school district, in your schools, and here is a rare commodity. I've been through a lot of things with Scottsdale Unified School District, from Auditor General and Attorney General investigations to changing principals in the middle of a school year that drove us absolutely bonkers, to helping start and pilot the first all-day kindergarten class at Hohokam. So I've seen a lot. Jim's seen a lot as the aide from Tonalea, and he's the one who got me back here. Tonalea has seen a lot of practice with positive progress in the last 9 months. I've seen a superintendent who goes to a community meeting and sits afterwards and talks with a parent who's really concerned and doesn't know where to go with an issue, and tells them what to do and how to do it and listens to all of their concerns. We didn't have that with the previous superintendent. With the previous superintendent, when I was asked to come aboard, what we had were a number of issues that were being accumulated by the Department of Education and the Office of Civil Rights. We don't want to see anything come of that. We want to see all their concerns, all of the things that have transpired, be solved. And I will tell you right now, we're well on the way to doing that. Everybody's happy in the Office of Civil Rights and in the Education Office I speak frequently with in Denver. This is not an easy thing. And when I say this about parents and kids, I also have to include teachers, because the teachers are the boots on the ground that make the whole thing work. As a parent, I couldn't have functioned without the teachers helping me as both a parent and a PTA parent. That wasn't going to happen. I'd never done anything like that before in my life to begin with. They were reassuring, they were partners, they were there with us. And I fear that a lot of rumors have transpired over the past few months that have cast the board, Dr. Birdwell, some of us who've been involved in kind of a questionable light. And I don't want to see that continue, but transparency has to happen, and it has to keep going. And Jim and I are here, and he's going to want at least a minute, but Jim and I are here basically to encourage you, give Dr. Birdwell the contract, and let's keep the wheels on the bus, because we're moving now.
All right. I don't know why we're here tonight. I really don't. We got cameras all around this place. If you go back and look at the film of a few meetings back, we encouraged you to pick her as our superintendent. Get that interim off. Here's the word on the street. There's a group called Ross. Respect our Scottsdale students. I don't know what rock they've crawled out from. I don't care. I want to respect our students. I want them to get the best education they can get. We can give it to them. She can lead it. Look what she's done with Conalea. That went so smooth. There's people that don't even know that happened, the transition. There's a principal leading that. There's two principals leading that school. Look what they're doing. Come on, guys. Let's get her on board permanently. Ross, if there's anybody here in this audience from Ross that wants to get up here right now with me and argue why they shouldn't pick her, let them come. Let them come up here. There's some dissension. If they don't like it, there's the door. Find a different profession. All she wants you to do is teach and give these kids the education they need. If that's bothering some people, so be it. If that's bothering some of our higher echelon, so be it. But let's get her on board. Let's get with this program. Give these kids the education they deserve and need. And let's not monkey around anymore. Thank you.
Shanna, and I'm sorry if I mispronounce this, Sadem? Please help me if I said it wrong.
Of course, Dr. Shauna Sadeh, school psychologist with the district, currently at Chaparral High School. I'm here to talk about Dr. Birdwell's contract, and I wanted to share my perspective. I'm a postdoc here, which means that I'm in my first year of residency after getting a doctoral degree. And before that, I was a corporate trial attorney for 7 years in Minneapolis, making a ton of money and not helping kids. So I gave that up and went to grad school for another 6 years and was poised to have a lot of different opportunities in the country. I moved from Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I owned a home, to Scottsdale because of the renowned reputation of the psychologists in that area. Because special education was known as a model of how things should be done. And I don't disagree with people who say that they want our school system to be improved. We should always be striving to improve. If you have 90% of your kids reading at grade level, that's amazing. Let's not forget about the 10%. That's worth our time and effort. But we don't have to destroy or dismantle what is working and is in fact exceptional in order to reach that 10%. So what is different about Scottsdale compared to other districts nearby? And I would look at the districts that Dr. Birdwell has led and see what is her model. Will the past predict the future with regard to her ideas about special education? Because I want this to stay, and I don't know the answer to that. I honestly don't. I want this to stay the kind of school district that highly qualified people who could earn a lot of money doing something else would move across the country to come to. And the reason, my colleagues here, I know that when you're new in a career, what is essential is to be surrounded by experts, because you're impressionable. You have to learn all those soft skills, all the things that they don't teach you in school. And my experience here has been so valuable that I decided not to go back to Minnesota. I sold all my stuff, and I'm here for a second year. And you can ask Mr. Link. I was telling him when I was working in his school last year, I'm only here for a year, I'm only here for a year, but then what do you look at me, I'm here now. I hope that that's some evidence of the quality of what you have in our district. And there's a lot of reasons that it works. We follow the NASP model. We follow the National Association for School Psychologists model for how to integrate mental health with learning.
in schools. So school psychologists are problem solvers. We work with teachers, parents, admin, students directly. This isn't a city where we just test and place kids in special ed. So I really thank all of you too for your service, because I'm sure you're very busy people and that this is a hard job for you. So if there's anything I can do after this meeting or later, please touch base. Thanks.
Thank you. And again, I'm going to apologize in advance. Joe, and help me with the name. I'm sure I'm doing this wrong. It doesn't help that I don't have glasses with me. Jusic? Okay.
Madam President, fellow board members, Dr. Superintendent Birdwell, all Scottsdale staff, parents, taxpayers, and last but not least, students. My name is Joe Gusick. I'm your lovable, slightly annoying American citizen. I'm your education Lorex. I've gone through from district to district to district, and I've come and looked at what we're doing. And I want to share with you a quote from President JFK. Too often we enjoy the comfort of an opinion without the discomfort of a thought. So I come with thoughts and ideas. So as I've gone to each and every school district that I've spoken to, and you're the 13th, on top of the state board, and top of the charter board, and Classrooms First. Why do we educate? I want you to go home tonight. I'm going to give you my opinion why we educate. But I want you to go home tonight and have that discomfort of a thought. If you look at it and you ask yourself, why? Really ask yourself. Go deep. Go deep as far as you can go as you can possibly go. I'll share with you my thought. If you look at it from an economic point of view, country after country after country invests anywhere from 4 to 7%, and there is one country out there that is almost 8% of their GDP. Why would they do that? They would do that to protect their country. In our country, we have states. We have communities, we have families, and we have civil liberties. So I challenge you to remember this in the future. We educate our youth to ensure the future of our country, our state, our community, so as to protect our families and our civil liberties. It is definitely something that is very important that we have that thought and make sure that we have a true mission statement for the state of Arizona, which we do not today. We do not have a singular one. So with that, I will say this. I'm going to go to my school board tonight and speak to them once again at Gilbert Public Schools. I will share with you this as I close. I thank you for serving. The two highest ways to serve your country is to serve in education and in the military. There is no other. And what you've done is put a step forward, and you've served your country proud. The reality of this is our holiday season has begun. And I want to say to all of you in this room, I wish you all a pleasant holiday season, however you choose to celebrate that, if that be Christmas, Hanukkah, and any other types of holidays out there. The reality is this: we are one country. We are one united country. And it is absolutely important that we remember that. And that in the state of Arizona, we definitely understand that very much so. So with my last 30 seconds, I want to share a little thought with you about Dr. Birdwell. I've been to school districts. I've seen Gilbert Public Schools implode. I saw it at ground zero. I was to a board meeting till 3:15 in the morning. And the beacon of hope was when I would go over to Higley and visit them. Dr. Birdwell is a superintendent of excellence. I will never ask anybody in the state of Arizona or anybody in this country for perfection in education. I ask you to deliver education excellence. I'm very confident as I walk out the door, just give me 2 seconds, that if you hire Dr. Birdwell, she will inspire your community. She will make sure that education excellence is delivered to every single child, every single day, in every one of your schools. Thank you.
Christine Marsh, and then Julie Siniowski.
Good evening, board members, Madam President, Dr. Birdwell.
Jill.
This will be very, very quick. In the essence of making sure that things are transparent, and this is more a rhetorical question, although I actually would really like an answer, but it really is rhetorical, of why we are moving contract negotiations directly into an action item instead of it being a discussion item first, which is standard operating procedure in Scottsdale Unified for things to move down the agenda. I'm a little bit concerned about just the perception of things not being transparent by going directly into it being an action item. I've been coming to board meetings for a very long time, as you all know, and I'm sure it has happened before, but not that I can recall, where something has gone directly into being an action item, and especially something as important and as vital as this decision is. So that's it. Thank you very much.
And Julie Siniowski.
Good evening, board members, Madam President, Dr. Birdwell, and Jill. A lot has happened in our country and our local community since we last gathered. And most of you know that I choose to try to focus on positive of issues, and I will try to do the same tonight. The other day, I made a vital connection between what I had experienced in a service mission in Ghana, Africa this summer, while out canvassing in Arizona this past election season, and a message of wisdom which had been shared by me recently by my father-in-law, who is a retired school administrator. The connection is the importance of listening. Now, I'll admit that for me, sometimes this effort is derailed by my enthusiasm, sometimes by frustration, and sometimes by the negative thoughts of others. But nonetheless, listening is a skill we all need to take to heart, show our value for, and improve practicing. This skill shows us and allows us to identify human needs. It provides personal connection to others, and sometimes simply leads to better understanding to address a problem. Humans find great value in being listened to, and I feel it is ultimately the best way to demonstrate respect. For it is by listening that we move forward and improve our systems and outcomes. I believe this should precede action. The teacher's voice often articulates the needs of their students. We need to show worth of this input. It is when this value is evident that our teachers will be most effective. I'd like to suggest that we begin to expand this process of listening in mutually exploring the reception of input. The positive potential of soliciting input and defining solutions together, I believe, is limitless. And additionally, as Thanksgiving is a couple days away, I feel it is necessary to actually express my appreciation for all the good things that we have here in our district. We have many support professionals and administrators who dedicate themselves to the best interest of our schools. We have parents and community members who choose to be included in the success of our schools. We have parents who support their students from beginning to end. We have very talented and hardworking students. And we have many extremely hardworking teachers who immerse themselves into the complex lives of our students, often orchestrating great success and meaningful outcomes seen over a lifetime. For these things, I am thankful. And lastly, I am thankful to all of our residents, teachers, and each of you who recently helped support the efforts of our bond and override. It is with such measures I remain hopeful that our professionals will be listened to and the needs of our students better supported. Although these methods do not replace the necessary legislative financial support for our schools, it sends a message of appreciation and optimism. And for these things, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. That concludes all the cards that I got for public comment this evening. The next item on the agenda is superintendent comments.
President Steed, Governing Board, let me start off by simply reiterating something you've heard a couple times this evening. We are extremely appreciative, grateful, cannot express beyond words to our community. Thank you for passing the bond and the override. We'd like to be able to say one day that we don't need to go out for bonds and overrides, but that's not the structure that Arizona focuses in. We are a state that has a system in place of which to ask for help from the community, and our community responded. So let me take an extra time here to thank the governing board, because without a item being put forth, the public would not have been on the vote, and you did that. You put it out there to the public. So thank you for your leadership in that regard. I also want to thank the staff for their support and what they did in educating our stakeholders, and to Mr. O'Brien for spending night after night with me and tolerating my funny jokes when it's late at night. But thank you for your leadership in this area. Ms. Harrington and the marketing team for all of the publications, information for clarity and more clarity as individuals were trying to seek. And to two parents who we will invite to a board meeting to officially thank them and their team, their officers. But to Yes to Children, I'd like to reach out and thank Cindy Bitcon and Karen Trion for the hours and hours. So unofficially but officially, thank you, and we will have a special meeting where we invite both of you to come up and show our gratitude. But it does say that the community supports what we're trying to do here, which is engage and educate and empower every student every day. And now the real work begins, and the next few board sessions we will begin the work that we promised the community of putting together that order of processes. So the next work study, and then at the next board meeting, the governing board will be focused on that bond. I know that there are some anxious individuals to see how that's going to turn out, so we look forward to the work. So make it a reality. Also want to talk briefly about open enrollment and say our online open enrollment period has begun for the 17-18 school year, November 1st, and runs through December 15th. So we encourage those who want to come to Scottsdale to get on and do that. And speaking of enrollment, just again, kudos to Dr. McCauley, her team, and others who have helped to put enrollment back in the schools. We appreciate the opportunity to have enrollment at each of the campuses. As of today, we have 963 open enrollment applications to review, so we've got some work to do. If you're asking, well, what do we expect? About 1,200. So we're well on our way of getting there. We need some more time. I want to clarify a myth that's going around the community. So the clarity is actually kind of a celebration. Hohokam Traditional has actually asked us if they could ask their community, could they be a K-8 school? And we certainly want to hear from the community. So the survey has been, rough draft has been written, and it is now being translated into Spanish as well, in both online as well as paper, and we'll be asking the community what they'd like to do. The rumor side of that is that we are combining Yavapai and Hohokam, and I'm here to tell you that is not happening. We are simply allowing Hohokam to tell us whether or not they would like to be a K-8 school, and that's been out there in the community, and I want to make sure that we have clarity of that. The principal is hard at work, and we're really looking forward to hearing from our community about what they would like to see happen. We have a celebration of the state marching band competition, and I'm going to read this one because it has a lot of detail for you. But the 2016 Arizona State Marching Band Competitions Championships was held the weekend before last at Glendale Community College, and I'm pleased to report that SUSD high school marching bands represented the district with a high level of performance. In Division II, Coronado High School earned 6th place finish. Congratulations to the Marching Dons and their director, Dr. Schultz-Bennett. And in Division III, we had 2 entries, Chaparral High School, which finished 7th, and Arcadia High School, which marched away with the 2nd place honors. Congratulations to the Firebirds. You can clap for them, absolutely. So congratulations to the Firebirds and the Titan Marching Bands and their directors, Mrs. Jennifer Moreau. And Mr. Jan Gardner for the work that they've done. And while I was at Arcadia, I got to visit those performing arts facilities, and I have to tell you, the teachers have great facilities, but wonderful teaching going on. When I was here at Coronado, both the choral and the band directors do an amazing job, and so proud to walk through those classrooms and watch our teachers. So we look forward to a continued statewide awards. Also, for those of you who attended the showcase, the Scottsdale Showcase, the 2nd annual, one of these days we'll say the 10th annual, the turnout for the 2nd annual showcase on October 22nd was terrific. We had nearly 3,000 people. And out of that, we had many, many tours at the schools, and so thank you, principals, for welcoming new families and giving them an introduction of what you have and an opportunity to share. The event is a massive undertaking, so thank you so much to the administration and staff at COCOPA for allowing us to converge on your campus. And again, I thank you for all of the schools, the principals, the secretaries, those who put together those displays, the students who attended. What a wonderful day for all of us to see that which was going on. And it did not go unnoticed that I saw principals visiting other principals' schools, gathering ideas and stealing ideas. So I expect next year to be very exciting. And finally, just want to send out a little call to the Sorora football team and say go SaberCats, and look forward to seeing how you do in the playoffs this weekend.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and I am going to have to recuse myself for item B, so I'm going to pull that. Is there anything else that anyone? And I'm recusing myself because I'm on a board for an organization that is included within those. Thanks for letting me know that that was included in there. And just to make it clear, I have no pecuniary or financial interest in it, but I do support the mission. And so I'm going to make sure that in a preponderance of caution that I don't appear to have any impropriety. So, are there any other items that anyone wants to discuss from the consent agenda? So I will make a motion then to approve the consent agenda minus item B.
I will second.
Thank you, Mrs. Perleberg. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that motion passes 5-0. And at this time, we will consider item 7B, accounts payable vouchers processed from October 7th through October 9th. Motion?
I move to approve that item.
Thank you, Mrs. Kirby.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Hartman. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 And I will abstain, so that's 4-0-1. The next item on the agenda is information discussion item 9A, revisions to the middle school planning guide for 2017-18.
Good evening, Dr. Birdwell, Madam President, Governing Board members. Tonight I have for you a presentation and recommendations for changes to the 2017-2018 middle school planning guide. I want to first thank our middle level principals, our district administrators and coordinators, curriculum team members, and Michelle Kardaskin and Rose Wright for all the work they've done in getting this document prepared for you. I know that you have received the red line in advance of today's meeting if you'd had an opportunity to review. These are the recommended changes, and I'll take a little opportunity to explain them as I go through. Of course, there is just some general updated language to it, for instance, updating web links and things of that nature that make it more user-friendly and more usable for our patrons. Also, we've had a change in one of the courses offered. We are no longer offering at all secondary levels the AVID courses, the sequences through both middle school and high school, and instead of replacing them with what we're calling college and career enhancement, it will be a very similar course, and we're working on that curriculum now at the schools, or with the schools that are going to choose to use it. Also, we've made some fairly significant changes with our world languages at the middle school to include Japanese exploratory, level A and B options, and levels 1 and 2. And I think this particular item deserves a little attention. I want to first thank Dr. Benson for the work she's done with the middle school principals in working with them and working through some processes and identifying some of the gaps at the middle school in terms of our world language offerings. I think that we're being quite proactive in the fact that we've really now have made tremendous groundwork in offering languages at our elementary schools, and as these children begin to move and matriculate through and hit our middle schools, we need to be prepared. An exercise that Dr. Benson did with our principals, we quickly realized that in some of our schools, for instance, we don't have sixth grade offerings, so we need to close that gap soon. Essentially what we've identified is really kind of three non-negotiables. One, we have to have a world language offering at all middle schools and K-8s at the sixth grade. Also, we would need, we want to have 2 languages offered at our middle schools and at least 1 language offered in all 4 of our K-8s. And lastly, and this is a big step, opportunities for our 7th grade students to perhaps start the high school trajectory in terms of their world language offerings. Now, the way in which we've tried to do that, or we'll move forward in doing this, is, for instance, currently we have a Spanish 1 offered at the 8th grade. One of the models that we could look at is you take that year-long course and now instead divide that into 2 years. So what we'd have is at the 7th grade, a Spanish 1A, and they would matriculate then through to the Spanish 1B. By the time they've completed at 8th grade year, they've taken the scope of the Spanish 1 class. Those students would have opportunity to hit high school credit just like any one of our level 1 students, and therefore, really, they have that opportunity then to enter high school with a pretty rich background, having that 2-year introduction to the language. Another one that we could look at doing is the opportunity to actually start that Spanish 1 or a level 1 language at the 7th grade. So then those students would take a level 2 in the 8th grade and move on to their freshman year at a Spanish 3 and onto a Spanish 4, Spanish 5. It's a rather accelerated trajectory, but we feel that there are students and there are some communities that might want to pursue that option. So our middle school principals are going to be working hard these next several weeks and into January to evaluate what course offerings they would want to have at their middle school. Additionally then, items that we've clarified within the red line version that you will see is our English Language Arts Honors, some of the language within that program. Language within science that indicates the shift from inquiry to an experimental design for clarity. ELD and its structure has been clarified in some of its verbiage, and the comprehensive gifted program. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Mrs. Perleberg.
Thank you, Dr. Von Etten. Just one quick question. Can you kind of help me? I know I kind of had a vague understanding of AVID to a degree. Can you help me understand a little bit better what type of student is best served by the College and Career Enhancement course?
Sure. Advancement via individual determination. I mean, it's a packaged curriculum, so to speak, and you pay a fee to the AVID program for district-wide participation. A misnomer is that AVID is remediation. It's not. It's in fact really designed for that student who is the 2.0 GPA. They're a C student. There's a culture at home, mom and dad perhaps or guardians did not attend college and have little to no experience in terms of a college experience. They might be a little reluctant to try that honors, but may have the potential or capability to do so. So AVID is intended to identify those students and really serve as that step to get them onto that next level, encourage them to take the honors. So the AVID elective supports them in making that transition. The curriculum would include interest inventories, career interests, how they learn, guest speakers. So really opportunities for that student to become ingratiated into a college-going culture.
And so the same would be for the College and Career Enhancement course.
Correct.
That the idea is that would just continue to serve that need.
Exactly. The three of our middle schools utilize it. I'll be speaking to the same thing in the high school, so I'm answering your question in advance if you have it there too. 3 of our middle schools utilize AVID, and in fact 3 of our high schools. So it is a kind of a feeder learning community course. So they are working now, and this will be a challenge because we won't have access to those AVID materials, and we're going to have to work some open source pieces and some things like that to make sure we have that same kind of curriculum to identify and work with those same students. I think that philosophically for me, the thing that I've stressed with our principals is that we can't just do it in name. Let's not lose that that philosophy of the student we are trying to serve and help.
Right, and possibly let it slide into just serving remediation
Correct.
needs, is that correct? Thank you very much for that clarification.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you. That goes right into the next item, which is item 8B, revisions to the high school planning guide for 2017-18.
All right. Well, let's do this one. Thank you again very much, Madam President and board members, for this opportunity to present to you recommended changes for the high school planning guide 2017-2018. Boy, this one's a lot of work every single year, and I first want to thank my co-facilitator, Diane Whitmore, my executive administrative assistant, Rose Wright, for all the work they do. They put their heart and soul into this document every year, and they're very much appreciated. Also, all of our Ed Services assistant principals, our lead counselor, our semi-representative, and Dr. Sakos of Student Services and Learning. If those members are here with us, all right, I'm going to ask this. Could you please stand for all the work you've done? Come on, Melissa. They're very good at what they do. Also then, as we go through the first quarter and create the high school, or I should say revise the high school planning guide, we of course have our curriculum specialists, our lead teachers and program directors that come in and speak to changes they might want to see within it. This is a timeline in which we work under. You'll see we move very quickly, August 10th through August 18th, in terms of the meetings we established to do all of our revisions. Those include courses also, course descriptions, but also the record-keeping guidelines. Here I am tonight presenting to you our first read, and hopefully we will go to consent on our next board meeting, December 13th. And by the middle of that month, we're ready to roll, and we will start getting our registration sheets and all the pieces we need to clean it all up and have it ready to go so that come January, we start registering students for their coursework next year, believe it or not. A little bit about our process. I just presented to you the schedule. And of course, then Diane keeps us very organized that with our binder that includes the high school planning guide itself, red line versions, our schedule. We produce agendas and minutes of every one of our meetings that we share with the committee and they can utilize to report out. We review all of our forms that our counselors and Ed Services people have to use. Next, communication. Communication is very important, and it's vital that our Ed Services people that serve on this committee go back to their department chairs, work with them, inform their building principal and their site administration in terms of what are the conversations, bring back that feedback to the committee when we meet again. Likewise, our lead counselor keeps our counselors informed of the changes we're considering and the opportunities we have to improve the programs. Also, record-keeping guidelines, it's not just revising them, but a big piece we do is what we call best practices, where we look at our record-keeping guidelines and work with people in terms of scenarios. How would you handle this situation based on the language we have? So that we can look at it and see that we have continuity amongst our schools, amongst our registrars, amongst our Ed Services people, that we're applying the guidelines equitably and understanding them across the board amongst our 5 high schools. These are our guiding principles for new courses, courses that are a necessity, of course, to increase, as a result of state statute or increased graduation requirements, we would put in. Courses that extend an existing course of sequence, we would put into the guide. We ask that course proposals be presented by the curriculum department for each of the area in the fall, of course, which we just worked through. These are the new courses that you will see in the 2017-2018 high school planning guide. They are IB, higher level theater, IB standard level Mandarin, college and career enhancement. There you go. There's your AVID piece at the high school level now. And then we did some cleanup in CTE and took some of our courses, the media tech, live news, media communication, and made them a little more comprehensible in terms of just calling them a film and TV 1, 2, and 3 for that sequence. Lastly, we have put digital communication 1, 2, and 3, which is a response to yearbook. And boy, this is a little bit of a story, but we have the opportunity, based on the credentials of our yearbook teacher, to have that funded through our JTED, through EVIT. In fact, 2 of our 5 yearbook teachers, because they meet that standard, we pay through that fund. Our JTED, we found out this year, will no longer look at yearbook or accept yearbook as a part of their journalism sequence. So we're trying to respond to that, and we have determined that, well, those same credentialing by those teachers could fall under now the guise of digital communications. So essentially what we're looking for is some avenue, some way that we can continue to have yearbook a part of a CTE course and funded through our JTED. So we're hoping that this would go through for that regard. Our schools that don't have a yearbook teacher that would meet those credentials can offer yearbook as a standard elective. Excuse me. These are our banked courses, or courses that we take out of the program and review every year. Russian 5, currently we have no level 5 trajectory. You might recall that last year we brought level 5 AP, Russian 5, level 5 AP to you, only to find that College Board has not pursued that as an AP option. So we got ahead of ourselves. So there is no Russian 5. That's all right. We have Russian 3 and 4 honors, and that works at this point, and let's hope that College Board goes out that way. We did discover that we had one last conflict within our honors program, and that was through the online. We had free economics or free enterprise honors still being offered in competition with economics AP. So we have stopped that. The enrollment was quite small, to tell you the truth. Also then some cleanup in Cool Stuff Technology. That is a CT offering that we just found student enrollment wasn't there. We did not necessarily need that any longer as an introductory course in that particular sequence. Concert band, men's choir, and music theory and songwriting, 4 of our fine arts courses. Again, we're seeing a decline in student enrollment. I can speak to an example such as concert band. Concert band is designed for our freshman student, kind of the novice musician there, and then they could go on to symphonic band. What we're really finding is across the schools, their numbers aren't there to support just a freshman concert band, and most students are just going right into that symphonic band. So I think that was an appropriate move. English for Living is actually a course that was designed to support those seniors that in the past were not meeting AIMS. AIMS is gone, so we don't need that, and it's not necessary in preparation for an AZ Merit End of Course test, so it's an obsolete class. Our on-campus community service is really captured within our teaching assistant offerings, and then again, there you have the AVID 1, 2, 3, and 4 will be banked in lieu of our new college and career enhancement. And this is kind of, this is great. The seal of by literacy, and I'm going to get a little bit ahead of myself. You know that we have you, hopefully we'll get a consent approval in December, and then generally once we finish the registration process, we find some things within the high school planning guide that we might need to bring back to you for some revision. At that time, I hope to be able to present to you for your approval that we would offer as a district the seal of biliteracy. This came to us with state approval just days prior to my delivering to you the red line version, so you're not going to see it in there. But essentially, the American Council of Teachers of Foreign Language have worked to create this seal or this piece that could go on a student's transcript and diploma indicating that they are, in fact, bilingual. Several states, primarily in the Southwest, have adopted this. Arizona is now one of them. The state Arizona guidelines are now in place. We hope to implement and start to determine costs of what we could do with this. Essentially, it's a fairly small cost, I think $14 to take this test for our students. And then once they have passed this stamp test, they would be able to earn that seal of biliteracy and say, I am in fact a bilingual student speaking 2 languages. More to come. And if you have any questions on high school planning guide, I'd be happy to take those.
Mrs. Kirby.
Thank you, Dr. Von Echten, for the presentations. My question's pretty quick. A couple of assumptions. First, assume that all of the new classes presented in both middle and high school make, and take out the JTED. What's the M&O budgetary impact when you consider the classes that make, and then you obviously will have classes that fall off? It feels like it's going to holistically be a savings. It just looked like there were more classes falling off than we were adding.
It's really kind of neutral. If anything, when you look at that with the list of bank courses, I think that it doesn't indicate potential savings, because the student is either in these 6 courses or these 6 courses, it's the same amount of staffing. If anything, I think, unfortunately, what it would indicate that is our students may have less choice. But we shouldn't see an increased cost due to that. Now, I will say that as we look forward with the world languages at the middle school, and that will be one that actually we might not see next year, but even the following year, for a school that may choose to offer a 7th grade Spanish or French 1 and then 8th grade Spanish or French 2, where are we going to make those decisions in terms of supporting that Spanish 2 at the 8th grade when only 18 kids are going to take the course? And yet they've invested a year at 7th grade. That's where I feel we have an obligation to allow those students to finish their 2 years. That could result in some staffing costs.
So if we get to that point, is it a further board discussion, or what are the decision points then?
President, Student Governing Board, Ms. Kirby, when we talk about offerings and you drive the staffing model by student request processes, what makes and what doesn't make is driven by the students who sign up. If you choose to let a class make it 18, that means another class is slightly larger. But we often see that. We see that an art class might be slightly larger, or a band class tends to get a little bit larger. So they tend to balance themselves out. There is, however, a cost right now to doing AVID. So switching away from AVID and creating our own will actually be a cost savings, because AVID is, we spend approximately, Dr. Benson, how much a year on AVID? Over $100,000 in AVID for materials. So there is a cost savings there that also can be reinvested into some of the materials we're talking about. So when you talk about adding courses, there's not necessarily a cost driven, unless you're adding a course that has a heavy restricted curriculum prescription. For instance, if you add an AP course, you must use the College Board curriculum, therefore you must buy it. So what the changes that we're talking about here will end up neutral.
All right, thank you.
Mrs. Hartman.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bennington, and thank you to your team putting so much work into these documents. I just had one question related to education and career action plans, the ECAP on 117. I was wondering if you could just share a few minutes on just the purpose and the intent of the ECAP. What I think I'm interpreting here is that this is becoming an option, an opportunity to initiate the ECAP process by parents and students. So I'm just wondering the intent of it, and it looks like it's going to an optional situation.
I don't know which of the red line versions you're referring to. I think the middle school planning guide uses language that we would like to see the opportunity extended for our 8th graders to begin that process. The ECAP at the high school, by statute, we have to do that. All students entering high school have to complete a program of study where they look at their entire 4 years.
Okay. And that's what I thought as well. I'm looking at just page 117. I think it's the high school planning guide. I could be misreading it. It just looks like it's becoming an optional, the way it's stated.
I can review that, and we would clarify that language.
Okay.
That's in our packet.
Yeah.
Is there a small number there from the planning guide on the page?
Let me look here. Yeah.
Sometimes.
It's page 4, and it's the blue line additional item. It says all counseling departments will provide incoming freshman parents and students opportunity to initiate the ECAP process. I read that as optional.
No. It's not optional.
Okay.
I think some of the language that originally we were looking at replacing almost implied the latter of what you were just saying, that it was not required. So if this is at all, we can enhance that so it looks a little more clear that it's an expectation that they do that, not optional. We need to do that. In fact, really that ECAP process starts at the 8th grade level, and certainly by the freshman year, it's in place.
I had a question about the course that's replacing AVID. Having gone through it with a young lady that I was mentoring in this community, it was heavily focused on goal setting and attainment, and I'm just wondering if the replacement is going to be similar.
I would hope so. That is the intention. As I said, when we look at the AVID elective course and the essential pieces that go in there in terms of its curriculum, goal setting is a piece of that. Our students should be looking at opportunities to explore how they learn, inventories in terms of college and career, college searches, and absolutely, goal setting is one of the important pieces. And so we would absolutely have that as an essential piece of a college and career enhancement course.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to see if it had similar emphasis. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much. The next item is an action item 9A, Middle School International Baccalaureate Program. Deja vu.
This time I have some partners up here. It's kind of nice. Thank you. Yes, International Baccalaureate Middle Years Program. We're going to ask for your approval of our recommendation tonight. With me at the podium tonight is Principal Terry Kellen of Mountainside Middle School and Nikki Wolfert of Desert Mountain High School. So you may ask a little bit about the Middle Years IB program. We do, in fact, at Desert Mountain as a high school have a diploma program. It's a strand within the school, a school within a school, so to speak, where students at the freshman and sophomore level can take pre-diploma courses and then enter into their junior and senior year the actual diploma program with the opportunities of graduating with, again, that seal, similar to like a seal of biliteracy of the IB program, but also then an IB diploma from the International Baccalaureate itself. The Middle Years program is not a middle school program. It is, in fact, encompasses then 6th, 7th, 8th grade and the 9th and 10th grade years. So this will have an impact not only on our middle school, but an impact on the existing program at Desert Mountain. What I have on this slide is I've paraphrased some of the IB literature in terms of what the philosophy is, but essentially, if I could kind of boil this down to three pieces, it's the articulation of learning and the development of the student's international outlook. It's a shift from teacher-led to student-led instruction and a relevance of the student's learning to the real world and the world issues around them. I think that really that's the crux of what the IB Middle Years program looks like, or frankly, the IB program in its entirety. So at this time, Mrs. Cullen's going to walk us through a little bit of the curriculum.
So there are 8 curriculum areas with the MYP, the Middle Year Program model. Your 4 content areas, English Language Arts, which we call Language and Literature, Individuals and Societies, which is our social studies, Math and Science, and the arts and PE are a very big part of this, as it is a requirement, and then language acquisition is a requirement for each year in the middle year program. The other unique part of the 8 curricular areas is the design course, which is really a course to apply technology into projects and into an end result. Which at Mountainside, we actually have a design course that would need, along with our other courses, training and tweaking, but it would fit very nicely into what we already have. And like Dr. Von Nechten mentioned, the real difference is the approach to learning. It doesn't change the curriculum, it doesn't change the standards, MYP, but it certainly changes how we deliver that curriculum. Integration between 2 content areas like social studies and language arts would be part of that, or other areas as well, but integration is a big part of it, as well as a community project, which is the culminating lesson activity in 10th grade, that is built throughout the 5-year program. And service is a part of, embedded within that, in the curricular areas throughout the program as well. I think I just covered all of that. All right, slide behind. What's new? Okay, Ms. Wolfert.
Okay, so the authorization process, how do we get through this process and get to our end result? So the first phase is the consideration phase and the school profile. So that's really what we're doing now, and that is developing the school profile and having these conversations with district leadership, school board members, and getting support at that level before moving on to the next layer, which is the request for candidacy and the application for candidacy. So those are two different application processes that go to IB, at which point we would hopefully have a decision on whether we are granted candidacy at that point by IB. Before I go on to the next set of arrows, down below, if you'll see the layer, during those first two stages, the heads or appropriate designees, so in other words, principals, Dr. Von Echten, et cetera, would be attending training, which they call the Category 1 workshop. And then moving into that next phase is the completion of teacher professional development requirements. So really starting to target particular teachers and particular subject areas for training. So as we move into the next section and into the full candidate phase, that is where we would be implementing the program on a trial basis, where IB, if you look in that box underneath, is coming out to do a consultation visit. We do the request for authorization and the application for authorization. And then finally, a verification visit to the school and a decision by IB as to whether or not they authorize the program. And then, of course, that bottom layer there is the ongoing commitment to professional development and training and sustaining the program. So what that looks like in a timeline format is this current school year, leadership training, that heads of school training that I mentioned, the feasibility study, which again is essentially sort of what we're doing right now, and the actual application for candidacy, which is really our next step coming out of this meeting and this process. Next year then is teacher training. That is the major area of focus, and that training happens to be called implementing the MYP curriculum. As Ms. Collins said, though, the curriculum is really that approach. The curriculum and the content and the standards that our teachers teach doesn't change, but that approach to delivering the curriculum in that IB way is what that training is about. We would need to select MYP coordinators at both the high school and the middle school level. Then recommend changes to the middle school planning guide and high school planning guide, which you just saw this year's recommended changes. So there would certainly be courses that would change, requirements that would change that we would need to get into both of those documents. And then, of course, community education and promotion and reaching out to our various stakeholders and educating our stakeholder groups. Then the next stage, 2018 and 19, that is the year that we would hopefully be a full candidate school for that entire school year. Continued teacher professional development, of course, the IB consultation where they come out to visit, the request for authorization, and then the final verification visit. And then lastly, in 1920, we would hope to be an authorized IB MYP school, or schools in this case, continued professional development, and the plan for sustainability.
So I'll take Ms. Wilford's timeline and apply some cost to that so we can see what that looks like going out over the next several years. First, within this, I mean, it speaks for itself. There's the application candidacy fee of $4,000, the training of heads of school. When you look at any of the training, essentially what I worked off of was the cost per person for the actual training. Almost all of these trainings are out of state, and so there would be travel and lodgings. So we look for a cost of approximately a ballpark figure of about $2,000 per participant. So initially this spring right away we have a $14,000 investment. Going forward then, next year we would have the candidacy fee, continued training for 16 teachers. That would be 8 middle school teachers, 8 high school teachers, within one each from each of those 8 curriculum areas. We would have substitutes. That's at $100 a day. We looked at 40 substitutes throughout the year. And we would identify then a 0.4 FTE release time for both a middle school coordinator and a high school coordinator. Going out 2 years, we would again retain that candidacy fee, but now we're going to pay for the verification visit. We would continue our training for high school and middle school teachers. Of course, we would continue the use and need of substitutes, our coordinators. By this point, we would have to utilize a curriculum unit warehouse, and essentially, this is a web-based program in which we can log the curriculum, the assessments, and track our students in terms of completing the IB requirements. Desert Mountain already utilizes such a program with their IB diploma program, so we're familiar with it. There would then be the additional staffing, and of course this is the one that when we spoke at the work study, this is the hardest one to kind of pin down without not completely replicating a master schedule, but we looked at the fact that we might need as much as a 1.4 at the middle school and an additional 1.0 at the high school. It frankly could be a little bit more than that, and then we'd also start initiating some supply budget in terms of resources that the program could use in terms of promoting and all the pieces that go with it to sustain the program. And when we go out to the final year, this is essentially what a program cost would look like on an annual basis in terms of increased costs. Again, now we have the annual fee, continued training, substitutes, the coordinators, the curriculum unit warehouse, the additional staffing, the supply budgets, but then we would also look at the consideration of a stipend of $100 per student to support the 500 students that would be completing their personal project their sophomore year. It's a mentoring, it's an opportunity to meet with those students and guide them through this additional rigorous challenge that these kids take on in terms of completing their commitment. This is a summary then of all those costs going over the 4 years, and we look at a grand total of just over $500,000. Frankly, actually quite a bit over $500,000. And then I bulleted points all the various ways in which those costs were calculated. This is a big program, and with any initiative like this, there is going to be challenges, and some are very manageable, and some will be just that, a challenge. If we look at our first 3 bulleted points, they all kind of come under the realm of master schedule and such. The middle and high school master schedules will look a little bit different. Frankly, the impact at the high school level, it won't change what that schedule looks like. The middle school would go to a 7-period day with students. That will be a little different. The master scheduling also, we might find that we see courses that are singletons. Those are always a challenge to identify, but this is nothing new. Our ed services folks deal with this on a daily basis, and our counselors and such, they work through it. Articulation of those schedules, and I mean just that, the Bell schedules. We have mountainside students that take GeoTrig over at Desert Mountain, so we got to look at how those start times for those kids would be impacted. And with the middle school, I'm confident that we would meet our 1,000 hours of instructional minutes, but we would want to do a review once we put that master schedule into place. As I said, we're going to have additional staffing needs. We might see, as language requirements at the middle school change, that we might see a shift of staffing from Desert Mountain to Mountainside Middle School as students complete perhaps level 1s and level 2s. That's a possibility. With that, recruitment of highly qualified world language teachers. Frankly, I think this might be one of our biggest challenges, going out and finding these people. There will be an impact as kids make choices to go into these programs of our current elective programs, and that's a fact we're going to have to face. Also, transfer language in regard to IB trained teachers. We make a heavy investment, as I said, $2,000 for these teachers to go to training. Some of our teachers might do this 1 or 2 years, and then due to circumstances might find that we have to go through a transfer process. Would we want to make sure that those teachers would be able to stay at the IB program since we've made such a heavy investment in them? And then also the transition from the pre-diploma program to the IB MYP at Desert Mountain. That will be a bit of a challenge, but I'm sure Mrs. Wolfert will handle that well. And her team and her teachers. Next steps, we're seeking your approval and endorsement this evening, and then of course then we will, if received, go ahead with our leadership training and continue our feasibility study, in which we're in the midst of, educating our community and our staff what this will look like, formalize the application and establish our budget. And with that, we recommend the governing board approve an international baccalaureate middle years program at Mountainside and Desert Mountain High School.
President Sneed, if I might ask you a question. Dr. Von Echten, if the students are already in a class being taught by a teacher, why is it you're feeling they need additional staff? Because they would be going out of a class into a different class, or that teacher would be teaching a different class than they currently are teaching. So it might be a IB language arts, but they're currently teaching language arts. So where does the additional staff come in?
Right, bit of a zero-sum game there. You know, if you're leaving one class, you're taking another, so it should be neutral. But what we were looking at, and this is what was difficult, is trying to measure support at the middle school, for instance, with the additional students taking world languages. Now, we would think they're not taking some other elective, but for me, it was supporting those smaller world language courses that might end up where we have, 18 students, and supporting some of that. I think we'd see the same thing potentially at the high school, as now we see more level 3 within those world languages, and supporting those kids so that if we had smaller numbers or a way that breaks down, that's how we came up with the additional staffing cost.
Mrs. Kirby. Thank you, Dr. Von Etke and team. So I'm very intrigued by the concept of the middle school IB in 9th and 10th grade continuing. I'm a little nervous about two things. One is the price tag, the full price tag. Simply because we have so many other competing priorities that we're not discussing at the same time to figure out where they all go. We're considering one without the rest. And then secondly, the whole school thing makes me a little uncomfortable. So my question takes into consideration those two concerns. So what are the decision points of when we move forward, when you come back to the board? Yes, we need to have a board conversation about moving forward with this program or not. And at those decision points, how much will we have invested in pursuing this program? And then along with that, if you'll also answer, and you did a really great job of putting together the activities and attaching years to them and price tags to all, that's really good work. When does the community conversation come into play, and how far down the path are we? And does that community go beyond just the middle school and high school and also pull up the elementaries? Because the feeder schools needs to have some input into this as well, I would think, because that's the school that they would be feeding into.
Okay, so let me try to take all of those. First, the impact at the school. From the research we did with the IB program, at a middle school level, within those middle years, it is a whole school, a full school approach. Now, with all of this pricing and these things, we looked also at utilizing then a full school approach at Desert Mountain also. Now, it's conceivable that what we could do instead at Desert Mountain would be to approach it as a strand, just like we do with the pre-diploma programs. So it's not whole school, and that would reduce some of our costs. So we do have some options at the high school in terms of the impact to the school and what that looks like. And keep in mind that students then, after their sophomore year, even if we go whole school at the high school, if they were to choose instead, IB is not for them, I want the AP College Board experience, which is absolutely dynamite, sure, they'd have that opportunity to approach it. When we look at these costs, I think some things, some measures we got to look at in terms of how is the revenue, potentially revenue, going to offset this. Now, I think something that I would look at is the last demographer in the demographic study I saw was we have a learning community that is declining in enrollment just due to, for lack of a better word, natural occurrences. But we also have some very stiff competition up there. So what I would look at is if we can maintain or increase our enrollment there, at $4,400 per student, you look at 130 students that we have kept or capture, it pays for the cost of the program. My understanding with the current IB program, the diploma program, is that the open enrollments that we have identified the IB diploma students that are OE themselves pay for the program, so to speak, if that makes some sense.
It does, but there's one piece, though, that you missed, and I asked a lot of questions at the same time, so it's my fault. Engaging the community. At what point does that take place?
Right.
And how much are we out of pocket at that point?
Right, I was trying to get there.
Okay.
So your third point was just that. We need to start engaging the community immediately. I think this is one of those scenarios where we can't move forward without your approval and endorsement, and if we don't have that, then why have the conversation to some degree with the community? That's right away. So when you look at that first figure for 2016-17, and we've invested $14,000, I would hope by this April and May, we've had dialogue with our community in terms of what that might look like. And you're absolutely right. This needs to go right on down through the whole learning community into the elementaries of what that looks like. Because students are now making a pretty big commitment in terms of staying within the Desert Mountain learning community. Then I think we'd look at that by April and May. Perhaps we can come back to you. Then if we feel that we're confident with that next stage, we could look at our further investment of 17 and 18.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Mrs. Hartman.
Thank you. And first, Principal Wilford and Kellen, thank you for the innovation and responding to I think, the needs of the community. Question for you, and it was really along the same lines. When I was looking at the way the timeline rolled out, to me, that community conversation is an important piece of it, just to get a feel for, is it meeting the demands? I mean, we think it's meeting the demands, but is it? And so, just for point of clarification, is that happening in 16-17, or is that 17-18 when we say community education and promotion?
Well, yeah, I think, frankly, probably should have moved it right away into the spring. It starts now.
Okay. So would it be reasonable then to have probably 2 checkpoints, it would seem to me, 16-17, so the end of this school year, to get a feel for what the results of the feasibility are, and then 17-18, a go, no-go decision, and then 17-18 with education and promotion, because then we start knowing with enrollment what that's looking like. And at that point, we have about $100,000 invested in it, and so we'll have the opportunity to decide, if there's a return on that investment, if it makes sense. Is that a logical expectation?
Very logical.
Okay, thank you.
President Steve, I can just ask one clarity. Is there the opportunity, we talk about the leadership training piece, for both these principals to be able to attend something this spring? It's available. Okay, just.
You say go, we're leaving in January.
All right. I appreciate it.
Mrs. Perlenberg.
Thank you. So I want to add to the voice that looks forward to having this come back to us very soon and have that confirmation that this is indeed connecting with the community, serving the needs of that community, and is recognized as something of real value for those families. Look forward to that. One expectation I'm wondering if we should have is, if it is a whole school situation, I guess if historically these programs have seen academics and test scores and things like that rise after implementation, what kind of expectation should we have going forward for those academic achievements getting a little higher or stronger?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there's 2 sets of metrics. We can look one at dollars and cents, and are we capturing kids? But I think you've raised the most important questions. In our work with, my work with Dr. Anna McCauley, in terms of when we start looking at dashboards and really those pieces that we can have in terms of college and career readiness and those indicators, boy, when we get that in a state where we can really present that and say, here's where we look at our freshmen in Desert Mountain, that would be the telling indicators that we've really been successful. Now, we're not going to have that at the end of this school year, and probably not, by next school year we could have some pieces. Now, what's the impact to a program that's in its infancy? I think that might be hard to make that connection, but certainly going forward, those would be the kind of indicators that we would use to measure success.
So schools that have implemented this in the past, do they show historical documentation? They've seen that increase? Is that part of the selling point of this?
Yeah, I think generally it's a rigorous program, and it's kind of one of those when a program that even if it's a strand, it's a rising tide raises all boats, and you'll see that even in other classrooms that the performance and the impact upon the school culturally will raise those scores. You know, I'd have to really drill down and maybe work with some other districts if they could provide us some of those specifics. But the presumption is, yeah, you would see a bump in those scores and student achievement with the program.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I wanted to say, I'm very impressed with the presentation. It's been well thought out. I appreciate just laying the challenges right out there. I want to give my thanks to the two of you because I know that there are a lot of challenges, and it's really pretty much going to fall on your shoulders to do this. But I appreciate the process and how thoughtful it is and how inclusive it is, and that it does bring in the importance of stakeholder engagement. And part of it is, why start something if you're not going to take the time to do it right, and to make sure that you give it every single chance for success. And I feel like by following this process, now I was accused this week of being a rule follower, so I guess that's just part of my nature. But I want to say thank you for doing this. I'm totally on board. From the aspect of the student engagement and the student success, I have to tell you that several of the IB kids that my son went with, and I see Mr. Pantier there, he had the pleasure of having my son in his classroom. We'll talk about it later. We're at the Barrett Honors College, and we're also accepted into the Walter Cronkite School. And the year that several of the IB students went there together, and I'm sure, and there were AP kids there too from Scottsdale, they actually made a program that allowed them to get their master's in 3 years if they wanted to stay there and pursue their master's in journalism. And so when we talk on one hand about trying to reduce the amount of stress that needing developmental classes or remedial classes in college, for a lot of our students, the acceleration that they felt, and these are kids that have gone, they're already doctors from when my son was there. They're all over the world, and it's just amazing to stay in touch with them. But rather than talking about what are we doing about remediation, these are kids that posed a problem to the college on how do we retain them? How do we keep them longer than just 2 years, because they come with so many credits and so much skill. And also, some of it, they had internships in high school, and so they were able to start their internships a year early at ASU. So I just couldn't be happier for the students. I couldn't be happier for the effort that it takes to really make this work. And just thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it, everything you've done. So this is an action item. Yes. Wow. So would anybody like to make I'm sorry, Mr. Jackson.
I'll be brief. I just wanted to follow up on President Sneed's comments. This is a ton of work, and so I just want to thank you for this. I think this is outstanding, and as one board member, I brag about the IB program at Desert Mountain all the time. Very, very proud of it, and the fact that we're expanding it to the middle years, I think it's fantastic, and you three are to be congratulated. This is a lot. This is a lot to take on, and so you have my gratitude and admiration. Thank you.
Would anyone like to make a motion? Mrs. Hartman? Or did you have another comment? Okay.
A motion.
Feel free.
And I was going, so you can word this right, but the motion was going to be to approve the go-ahead with the IB-MYP program with the checkpoints of 2016-17 and 2017-18 that will focus on community support and engagement. Support, probably.
Yeah, I think that would be the appropriate.
Okay, strike that last sentence. Checkpoint for 16, 17, and then 17, 18.
Okay, I think we got it.
Okay. And, I think we meant to say middle years program, not middle school program?
Years program.
Well, it said school on the agenda. It's just a typo, I'm sure. Do we have?
I'll second that.
Oh, thank you. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
That motion passes 5-0. Thank you so much. The next item on the agenda is action item B, gifted learning services testing fee.
Good evening, Board President Sneed, governing board members, Dr. Birdwell, Cabinet, and Ms. Olivos. Good evening. I'm here after our work study last time to bring back some of the changes that were discussed earlier, and it's recommended that we approve charging fees for gifting services for students not enrolled and living outside the district boundaries, and fees for preschool gifted testing that would be at $120 for fee. If there are any questions, I'm here to take those.
I wanted to thank you for addressing the concerns that I had in the work study. Looks like everything was taken care of here. Thank you.
That's my job. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions, concerns? Okay. Ms. Kirby?
Thank you. Maybe this is what you just meant, but because I didn't really understand the questions from work study, I may ask it again. So I just want to make sure, since gifted students, are we within all of the federal laws and state laws? As by charging these fees, are we within federal and state law?
I'm going to defer to legal counsel.
Yeah, and also, Dr. Nance, if you'd like to answer any of those, feel free to step up, but I know that he's been tracking that from a legal perspective.
Board Member Kirby, thanks for that question. I worked with Maylon a little bit on this as she got this together. And there was a comment last time about federal jurisdiction, and I spoke with President Sneed about that later. That was a misunderstanding. There is no federal law regarding fees or gifted. There's only state law regarding providing services to gifted students. With board approval of charging fees for these groups, we are permitted to do that. We need the board to approve it, but it's okay for us to do that legally.
And you have no other legal concerns? Whether the question's been asked or not, I'm asking you, do you have any other legal concerns?
I do not have any legal concerns with the fee.
And thank you for following up on that. Okay, would anyone like to make a motion? Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Ms. Perleberg, I think.
I'll give it a try.
Okay.
So I make a motion that our district begin charging fees for gifted testing of students not enrolled and live outside the district boundaries, and as well as fees for preschool gifted testing.
Okay, and both of those are specified at $120 at this time?
Yes.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Kirby. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. That motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is item 9C, vote to issue a request for proposal for executive search consulting services for a superintendent search. Are there any comments, questions, concerns? Okay. Mrs. Hartman?
Well, I thought I'd kick it off. So, between the work study and tonight's general meeting, several of us, if not all of us, I think, actually offered to solicit input from the community. And so there was a lot of input, and I just wanted to create the space to have the conversation around what that input looked like. As I mentioned on Thursday, I feel as though it has been a 10-month interview, and that has been a very, very transparent process, not only for myself, but also the benefit of the larger community as well as all the stakeholders. And that doesn't happen in a typical executive search process. As a governing board member, I feel as though I represent 4 stakeholder groups. First and foremost is our students, and I believe that in this 10-month interview process that I, as well as all the feedback I've received, believe that Dr. Birdwell puts students absolutely first, and I don't think there are many people that would disagree with that. The second stakeholder group is the parent community, and quite frankly, if our students are happy, our parents are happy, but I can share that I've received community feedback across all 5 learning communities. And, you know, although no feedback is 100%, it's overwhelmingly positive from a parent perspective of Dr. Birdwell's performance over the last 10 months. The third group is the larger community, and through public comment, we've heard that, I've witnessed that in the last 10 months, and there's significant support community-wise. The fourth stakeholder group is our teachers, which is an equally important and additional stakeholder group. Once again, feedback is across the board. I mean, there is, in any, I think, strong leader and innovator, there are incredible supporters, and there are also people that are concerned and anxious. But I wanted to talk about that for a minute. And I wanted to talk about 2 concepts. First, with respect to change, because I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of teachers and on behalf of teachers, and change is real. And change also creates anxiety. Now, I also heard the other night that somebody said change is painful, and I don't believe change needs to be painful. Change should not be painful, but it is our responsibility from all those stakeholder groups to ensure that change is not painful. Now, it's not to say it doesn't create anxiety, and if you look at it from a change perspective, in my experience, there's a change curve. And what the change curve looks like is, if you don't mind me sharing this, but I think it's so important because it's what I heard in the conversations I had with so many people, is that there's a curve that goes through denial, resistance, exploration, and acceptance. And the goal of any change curve is to get through it. And that's artful, because everybody is at a different place on that curve. But what I do think is interesting about a change curve is at the bottom of that curve, there's something called the Valley of Despair, and that's exactly where we're at. And that is when you're between actually resistance and exploration. And in my experience, where you meet the individual, because it's our job from a leadership team, so whether it is from the superintendent or the leadership team or site leadership or teachers and peer teachers, is you need to meet somebody exactly where they're at. And what's important is that when you're going through that change into that exploration, is you need to be transparent and inclusive, and it needs to be participative leadership to help people get through that cycle. So, having said that, there are 2 things that I'd like to offer based on the conversations that I have that we can do as a governing board, at least from a recommendation standpoint, to help us get through that curve. The first is actually around a conversation that came up during public comment, which is an assessment in terms of an employee engagement type survey. There's been a lot of conversation. I know there's been some surveys that have gone out there, but what I would really like to see, and as a board would advocate for, would be an inclusive survey process so that we can understand exactly where our employees and our teachers, whether certified and classified, exactly where they're at through this change process, so that we baseline it, we understand where it's at, we understand where our opportunities are, and what we're doing well, and so that we have the opportunity to go back a year from now and continue to monitor and manage the inclusivity and what that employee engagement looks like, so that we have data and we collectively pull that data together and understand it and learn from it and continue to improve. The second point that I'd like to encourage us to do, and I know it's already on the agenda, but to move us forward in with shared agreement and shared view is to continue to support what our vision and hopes and therefore our strategy and goals look like for SUSD. I know we're going to be spending some time from a board perspective pursuing that and talking about that in January, but we're just one stakeholder group. Once we identify and we can clearly crystallize what the goals are of our district, we need to be able to engage all those stakeholder groups in that process to make sure we are all crystallized and on the same page with that, because I believe if we share the goals of where we want to be, I have every bit of confidence that we have the talent within this district at the teacher level, at the site level, at the leadership level to reach those goals and together support each other and pull us forward through that process. So I just wanted to share those thoughts based on the many very thoughtful conversations that I received over the past few days and really over the last 10 months. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kirby, you were next.
Thank you. So I would like to take a moment to explain my votes tonight. And as I do so, I really am explaining Pam Kirby's vote. My comments are not meant to, they're not meant to try to influence anyone else or cast a light on anyone else's vote. First, I want to thank everyone, and I haven't had a chance to get back to all of you who did email since Thursday. The refreshing part was that I heard from over 80% of the emails I got from individuals that I have never heard from before in the 6 years that I've been on this school board. It was mind-blowing. And so that speaks volumes to me is that we have a renewed interest and engagement in SUSD. So I will respond over the coming days, but thank you for those emails. So I want to speak specifically to the option and to the emails that came forward that said, hey, we really like Dr. Birdwell, but go ahead and go through the search and see if she still bubbles to the top. And I reflected on that option, as we have several in front of us, but I reflected on that one and why I was so uncomfortable with that particular option. And at the end of the day, the reason why is because in my head, in my heart, and my gut, they're all aligned with the same decision. And if I were to go through that process of moving forward with an RFP, it would just be nothing more than a political move to try to straddle both sides of the fence, to make everyone happy and to try to placate some of you. So at the end, I would feel like I was doing a disservice to the community if I'd moved forward with that path, because I would be running away from the decision that in my heart and in my head and in my gut I feel is the best decision to make today. Unfortunately, very few of you have had or most of you, you've not had the opportunities that I have over the past 10 months to be in the conversations that I've been in with Dr. Birdwell, to have the observations I've had with Dr. Birdwell and the experiences. And I wish I could bottle all that up and give them to you so that you could better understand where I'm at today. But the one public comment that was made earlier, he wrapped it up in one word, and I'm inspired. She inspires me every day. So I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate all the conversations we've had on this, and I really do appreciate the input, and I am excited to move forward.
Mr. Jackson, you were next.
Okay. This is as big a decision as we make as a board here, I would think. And I think that's partly why we've had so much input from the community. I have struggled mightily with this one because I've gotten impassioned emails really on both sides of this issue from people that I care about on both sides, and frankly, equally. This is a tough one because I see both sides of this issue, and so I struggle. But we're tasked with making a decision tonight, and I intend to do it. I do want to say I wrote some words down because I had a lot in my brain last night and I couldn't sleep. But I want to say Dr. Birdwell has shown me herself over the years to be a very talented, over the months, to be a very talented and effective thought leader and superintendent. She has, in a very short period of time, analyzed our district. She has determined some areas that need attention, and she has put together a plan for student achievement that I think makes a lot of sense and I'm very excited about. In addition, through her strong leadership, she has very quickly developed a facilities plan that was so detailed and so thorough. She brought the school board along, which was no easy feat, and here we are with a substantial school bond pass that I think will truly set our district on a wonderful course for the decades to come. I don't think you can overstate how important getting that bond passed and rebuilding our facilities was, in my opinion. And so that was a huge accomplishment that I'm very grateful for. And as I've contemplated this vote, I've tried hard to take into consideration the thoughts and concerns of all the stakeholder groups that Mrs. Hartman referred to. Oftentimes it feels like their interests are at odds with each other. And the feedback from the community and the parent groups, frankly, was overwhelmingly positive about Dr. Birdwell's leadership, and there is an excitement, and people do feel there's momentum in the district. I've also heard from people I care about that would prefer, and we did in fact say we were going to do a superintendent search. That was my memory of the beginning of the year, that we move forward with that. And they have every right, I understand that sentiment. And that is what the board said, in my memory. And there are people that want us to move forward with that. Where I come down on this is I believe this momentum we have, this excitement we have, is not something that I'm willing to jeopardize. It's critical, in my opinion. And I think the community is, as Board Member Kirby said, the community is excited and they feel inspired. And that is something that we've been lacking, I think, for too long in this district. And I think it's something precious and something fragile and something that needs to be protected, I guess. At the end of the day, we are in the people business in this business. We are in the people business. We educate kids. And I do want to say quickly, I've been hearing from a lot of educators about this issue. And I wanted to say it's absolutely critical that educators feel comfortable expressing their opinions openly and honestly and without fear of retribution. That type of honest dialogue is critical to the health of any organization. Frankly, it's doubly so in a public school district. Teachers need to be treated at all times with respect and the honored professionals that they are. And their input needs to be always sought out and valued. And it's also important that teachers and everybody feel comfortable contacting the governing board if they feel necessary. There's a chain of command. Of course, the chain of command needs to be followed. But we are elected officials. Anybody in the community should feel comfortable contacting us if they have something they want to say. Everybody in this room is part of that community. So I think that's, I've kind of jumped to the end of what I wanted to say, but I want to close with SUSD is a very special place and has a long reputation of valuing teachers, and that culture needs to be cherished. And if whoever our superintendent is, if it is Dr. Birdwell, I ask that the superintendent commit to creating a culture in Scottsdale schools of openness where teachers feel empowered. And I ask our new board to work together with our new superintendent, whoever that is, to make good on our governing board goal of making Scottsdale schools the district of choice for teachers in Arizona. And anyway, thank you for your time.
Mrs. Perleberg.
Thank you. And first, thank you all to our board members for going through this process together. I don't think I've ever been so proud of our board and of our leadership in this topic. As Board Member Jackson said, it is probably the most important decision we make as a board, obviously. And I am proud that tonight we are owning our votes, owning our opinions, our understanding as we make this vote. And I hope that we are showing our community that it has been a very thoughtful process and one that we in no way have taken lightly and in no way have devalued our community's input and their, or ignored their investment in this decision as well. I am incredibly grateful, like my fellow board members, that our community has been so engaged in this discussion. I too believe that it has been a 10-month-long discussion. I do feel confident that we are honoring a process of transparency and open discussion throughout these months, through individual conversations with our community, and of course, you know, through our emails and things that we read and take very seriously. I am proud to own my vote tonight, and do want to explain where it's coming from, because I agree with Board Member Hartman that we represent obviously several groups, and we have to take into consideration their priorities, and obviously the top one is always the students. So to all the stakeholders, staff, parents, outside stakeholders and community members that have expressed their support of Dr. Birdwell and have shared their optimism that they feel with regards to the direction that this district has been headed in for 10 years. And to those to all those that have shared the inspiration that they have found under Dr. Birdwell and her leadership teams, under their leadership and their discussions and conversations that they've brought to our district. I said, I proudly agree with you. I have felt that inspiration myself as not just a board member, but a stakeholder, a community member of SUSD and of Scottsdale. I am honored to represent your voice tonight in that optimism and in that inspiration as we move forward. To those that have expressed serious concerns and fears, want to reiterate, along with my fellow board members, that those are never to be ignored, never to be dismissed. I feel personally, as a board member for 4 years, I have always shown that that dialogue and those discussions have always been valued and always taken to try and move us to a better place in this district. I have always valued the health of this district and how we set our classrooms, our teachers, our students, our community up for success rather than finding ourselves set up for failure. So these fears and these concerns will become a part of the dialogue in the future. I have no concerns about that. And I just wanted to say on a little more personal note, again, explaining our lens and where we are. I do want to make it clear that, again, not dismissing concerns and fears. They're very real. And let's face it, public education, SUSD, our educators, it's been a tough go these few years. There's no doubt about that. And I hope our community understands that our board never forgets that, never takes it for granted. But the reality is I am not voting tonight for Dr. Birdwell's permanent contract because I think she has some magic wand that is going to solve all our problems. I'm not voting because I think she has the powers to heal all our wounds instantly. So let's face it, some have been festering for years. She cannot mend us where we are broken instantly, and that is not the expectation that I have tonight as I vote for her permanent contract. But for 10 months, the conversations I have had, that I have seen our district have, show to me her dedication and passion for all the hard work that is absolutely necessary to make SUSD strong so that we can heal ourselves. And I sit here tonight incredibly hopeful that we still have it in us after years of a tough go, that we still have it in us to heal ourselves as a district. I believe we do. So my vote is one of optimism and hope. I believe her team has a profound understanding of what a student-focused district looks like. And that is a lens that I know our community has been craving, and I know we will embrace it as we really work together to educate and to empower our students every day. Thank you all so much for your engagement tonight.
Thank you, everyone. I wanted to thank everybody who took the time to contact us over the last 10 months, not just this week. I feel badly, quite honestly, that we gave everybody 4 days to hustle, and some people may have heard about it and some people may not. I think I mentioned before, I'm a rule follower, and I feel very strongly that, again, sort of like the IB program, that the more time you put into ensuring success in the front end, the more likely it's going to come out a success at the end. And that's what I've been trying to do for 8 years, is ensure success. I think if every person in this district cared about ensuring the success of the person next to them, we would have all been in a lot better place a lot sooner. And I have to say, probably because I was on the last selection committee, and I noticed with some of the information that we got that the last item that the community desired was someone who could part the Red Sea. I know that is kind of a joke, but that is also what our community expects. Believe it or not, that comes through loud and clear with almost every agenda that we have. And I'm probably coming from a point of view that is admittedly tainted, in that I was in the classroom and that I have a lot of family members who are classroom teachers. And also from the fact that I have worked with 8 superintendents between my job in Ohio and my job here. And they all bring strengths. I can name a strength, and it seems like they almost always have appeared at a time when we needed their strength. They also bring weaknesses. Nobody's perfect. None of us are. No superintendent is. What I ask is that we make a public commitment to each other's success at this point in time. I also come with the deficit probably of having an incredible superintendent that I worked for in another district. And that probably did come close to parting the Red Sea. Unfortunately, today I learned that he just passed away at the age of 63. And it's too bad, because the world needs more people like that care about everybody and doesn't find anyone, no kids, no parents, no teachers, disposable. And I think that's the most important thing to me, and it's probably because I come from that tainted lens. But I don't apologize for it. And to me, everyone in the entire community is important to our future community. That includes the stakeholders that don't have children, that may not be paying attention to what's going on right now. But I hold the teachers, the boots on the ground, in the highest esteem. That's because they touch everyone. It's our teachers that make our kids successful. It's our teachers that make our principals successful. It's our teachers that make our superintendent and board successful. And lest anyone think that the teachers who have been brave enough to express their concern are just afraid of change, I don't think that that's the case. I think they're afraid of political change. They're afraid of that change that people promise when they're running for office. They're afraid of that change that when you say it, everyone shakes their head and says, yes, you're right, we need change. But it's ambiguous, and it means something different to each person in this room. So yeah, we're all going to walk away shaking our heads saying yes. The problem is, too many times we see change for the worse. And in education, it takes a while to get there. I know that Dr. Birdwell has been a change agent in Higley, and I congratulate that community. They had 2 high schools rated A last year, and that was an improvement. But I have to say their top high school was rated equally with our 4th high school in achievement. And so part of me says, wow, why can't we have it all? Why can't we have someone that's been in the #1 district? I also know that a lot of the change that came about in Higley involved losing a lot of site leaders, and maybe that had to happen. But in following up in where those site leaders went and what they're doing now, most of them are in the #1 rated district in our state, and they're in A schools. So it really is about how you treat the teachers, and they will make the principals successful, and they will ultimately make Dr. Birdwell successful, and in this board. And it just can't be stressed enough. Unless anybody out there thinks that the people that have spoken to us in a negative manner or have feel devalued or disrespected are the bottom 5% that I keep hearing about, or are not top performers, I can assure you that every person that reached out to me is a top performer. They have been active in the district and at the top of their game for a number of years, long before any of us were here. And hopefully for our kids' sake, they'll be here for a long time afterwards. So I'm sorry, maybe I'm a spoiled Scottsdale person, but I want the whole thing. I want our teachers to be inspired too. And I'm so grateful for all you've done. I don't want that to go unnoticed. It's not easy to handle us, and you did it. And you've done a lot of good things. You got this board to agree on a lot, and that hasn't happened in a very long time. I just want to really be careful that we're not just looking, as some people say, for anybody other than our previous superintendent. And it isn't a knee-jerk reaction. That it's a thoughtful process that truly, truly, I want to see value the boots on the ground. So with this, I'll make the motion. I know we've talked a lot about Dr. Birdwell specifically, but the motion actually, let's see, how it's worded. The motion that we'll be voting on is to issue request for proposal for executive search consulting services for a superintendent search. So I'll make the motion and we will vote from there. If there's no second, then it doesn't pass. It's not considered. So then we go to the next. Go to the next action item, which is vote to appoint 2 members of the governing board to negotiate with Dr. A. Denise Birdwell a superintendent contract. I see confused looks. Is anybody confused as to why we moved on? Okay. If we don't have a second, there's no motion, there's nothing to vote on. Okay. So that's the next item. Is there any discussion, questions for the next item?
Oh, any discussion?
I'm ready to make a motion which may lead to discussion. We can have discussion in between, right?
Yeah, we can come back to discussion if it's necessary. Mrs. Hartman, you're blinking.
So this is the discussion, right? And are you waiting for the motion or the
If there's
discussion?
any discussion or comments,
Okay.
this would be the time to bring it up, and then we can make a motion for that item.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know how we want to move forward with this, but I certainly would be comfortable in being one of the board members to work through the process to support Dr. Birdwell in the negotiation and development of the contract.
Okay.
All right.
Mrs. Kirby? Oh, are you, I'm sorry, I don't think you're, oh yeah, it is.
Okay,
It's
there I
working.
am.
Mrs. Kirby, you're
Sorry.
next.
Okay, I'm going to just jump in with them. Thank you for that, because that's what the discussion I thought we would have. But I'd like to move that we appoint Vice President Perleberg and Board Member Hartman to negotiate with Dr. A. Denise Birdwell a permanent superintendent contract.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that motion passes 5-0. And the next item on the agenda then is future items. Board members may propose topics for future consideration. Okay, Mrs. Hartman.
I would like to see at least a discussion, a work study discussion item on what an employee engagement survey might look like and how we might go about that in a collaborative process with all stakeholders.
Thank you. Is Dr. Sitton here? Dr. Sitton, do we usually do that in January? Okay. Just wondered. Dates of upcoming meetings. Thursday, December 8th, 3 p.m. We have a study session that will be at Mojave, District Annex. Tuesday, December 13th, 5 p.m., the regular governing board meeting. Thursday, January 12th at 3 p.m. We have a study session again that would be at Mojave District Annex, and that will be with the new board. Congratulations, new board members. It's nice to see you both in the audience.
Stand up and wave.
Yeah. Hi.
No.
Yeah, that should have been part of the election results. To all three of you, congratulations. I know it was a tough fought battle.
Tough race.
Right? You know, raising all that money, that's the toughest part. And Tuesday, January 17th at 5 p.m. is a regular governing board meeting. And just as an aside, I would have been just as happy to have this discussion with the new board tonight. But I have to follow my soul.
And President Sneed, if we could just offer to the community on that meeting in December, we will be, after following the board meeting, celebrating the service of Mr. Jackson and Ms. Sneed, and we appreciate your attendance and thanking them for all that they've done.
It's been my honor. I'm sure Mr. Jackson feels the same way.
What'd you say?
It's been my honor.
It's been a privilege.
Yes, it has, honor and privilege. Governing board reports. No? Okay. And with that then, I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that motion passes 5-0.